Ti Do Productions is a national cabaret company making their Chicago debut at Davenport's on August 9th with an incredible lineup and a show called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Chicago. We have Alana Knobel, performer and director of production at Ti Do, and performer Grant Kilian, who is the headlining act for the night. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank
Thank you
you,
for having
Rudy.
us.
We can see Ti Do shows in DC, LA, Vegas, Pittsburgh, and New York. Tell us about the first one that's coming to Chicago.
So Latino Productions is like a national cabaret company. It started in 2012 in DC. So it's so great. It was started by Don Michael Mendoza and Reggie Copico, who are fantastic, amazing, talented people. Reggie is like a internationally known spoken word artist. He's often referred to as the Lady Gaga of spoken word. He's just absolutely fantastic. And Don Mike is wonderful as well, who has led this company since 2012, grown it all over the nation and all those cities that you mentioned and whatnot. And these shows are really about the mix of musical theater and spoken word art, which is something that people don't think would go together, but they actually do. I mean, I remember my first time seeing a Latido cabaret show, and there was musical theater, there was spoken word, and I was like, wow, that's like really beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, so it's absolutely fantastic. And ever since that I started working with the company, I was like, why aren't you guys in Chicago yet? You're in all of these great cities all over the country. And I was like, there's one that you're missing, which is where
My
I'm from.
hometown. Yeah.
My hometown. And I finally got the opportunity to talk with Don Ike and be like, listen, I was like, I kind of want to open the Chicago chapter. And he was like, okay with that.
Things are gonna
But
be
what's different about the Chicago location is that instead of musical theater and spoken word, I wanted to do a little twist, and it's a combination between musical theater and stand-up comedy. Specifically just because Chicago is a city that is just known for stand-up and improv and, the comedy town of what we're known for. So it was just kind of inevitable that those two things like would come together.
Grant, let people know a little bit about you. Over 60 productions that you've been a part of. You've also are a director at Edge of the Wood Theater. Tell us a little bit about you, some of the productions that you do, and just so people get to know a little bit more about you, because you're so funny, and I can't wait for this show. But give us a little bit of a background.
I'm an actor and a director, primarily working in the theater scene in Chicago, but I've done some television and some film as well. And yes, I'm an ensemble member at Edge of the Wood Theater on the north side of Chicago. I recently assistant directed The Minutes there by Tracy Letts, and we got nominated for 4 Jeff Awards, and our lead took home the Jeff for Best Performer in a Short Run, which was very exciting. And I am directing another play there that opens in a couple of weeks that hopefully I get to tell you about a little bit later.
You play the piano, you create these super funny songs. You guys have both done performances together. I mean, tell me a little bit about creating some of those songs and the inspiration, and maybe a little taste of what we're going to see in the show.
Well, what's so funny is that the inspiration came from, it was coming out of the pandemic. I realized that I wanted to find a creative outlet that I could pursue on my own, because I love acting and I love directing, but it requires other people, and you're not always in control of when you get to do it. So, and I've always wanted to write a musical or a play, but those are really hard things to do right off the bat. So I thought a good stepping stone would be to just start writing some kind of standalone, contained cabaret songs. And what's funny is that I I didn't set out to write comedy songs. I was just kind of setting out to write songs. That was more of what the exploration was. I was like, I wanted to, see if I could. I've been a musician for years. I wanted to come up with some songs that were well structured and sounded like they fit in the musical theater canon. And it just so happened that all the good ideas that I had were comedy ideas, and so naturally it just kind of worked out that way. But it's great because then it kind of lends itself to being in a cabaret setting, so I can now kind of get to perform them live. And I posted them on my website and on social media, and I got a really great response. So I'm excited to do them live for the first time.
You get to see a performer kind of pour out their soul in a unique way that you don't really get. Obviously when they're playing a role, they bring parts of that, but it's not necessarily 100% them that you get to see
Totally.
on stage. But talk a little bit about what that cabaret experience, means to you. And then Alana, I'm going to ask you the same question.
Certainly more vulnerable and more exposing, because you're right, you don't have a character to hide behind. And then in my case, I don't even have a writer to hide behind. So I think It's more exciting in a lot of ways because I think if it goes well, it's more rewarding, but it's probably also more humiliating if it doesn't go well. But it's it's a risk worth taking, and you're totally right. It's so fun to see actors in that setting because it is kind of a different skill set. But sometimes you have to jump off the cliff and figure it out on the way down. It's kind of fun.
What about for you, Alana?
Yeah, I mean, I love cabaret. It's been, I think, a huge part of my life, honestly, since high school, because I think our first introduction to cabaret was at high school when we were doing that coffee house cabaret. That was my first introduction to it. And I was like, oh, I kind of like this. And then, I've been in New York for about 7 years, so it's still constantly part of my like everyday life. And I find it like an outlet to continue to push boundaries, which I quite enjoy. I mean, I created a cabaret series called Beyond the Box, which was about allowing a space for performers to go outside their like character type that the industry so often puts us in. So like that was a huge, huge part for me. And then this past June, I also produced a Pride show with Ti Do. That was called Pleasure Palace, and I think it was the first cabaret in a while that I have seen that has included such different art forms. We had drag, we had burlesque, we had theater performances, we had aerialists as well. So to me, cabaret is like, while it is vulnerable for an artist to go up there and like be themselves, it's also to me a space that like while it allows that, it's a space where you can continue to push things that are outside of a script.
I don't know, Alana, Grant, who wants to talk about some of the other performers that are also going to be joining you that night?
Have fantastic performers, and a lot of them are friends with Grant because he's performed with them. I mean, if you want to talk about
Yeah,
some of the people.
Aurora Pennepacker is a good friend of mine. She's about to be the lead in a play, in a musical at the Writers Theater. Maya Halava, who I just saw on TV the other night, and I just saw her at the Goodman a couple months ago. She's a great friend. She's going to be there as well. Josiah Haugen, who's about to tour the country as the lead vocalist for the Four C Notes. So we have super impressive people. And then some other people who I don't know, who Alana has vetted, that I'm excited to meet and see them perform that night too. Chicago has such a deep bench of talent. And I think my advice to people would be come see this show and other shows now, because in 20 years, it will be much more expensive to see some of these people once they hit it big. I mean, Chicago has a history of everyone that was working in Chicago in theater in the 90s is famous now. It's like, Nick Offerman and Steve Carell and Tina Fey and Colbert and Keegan-Michael Key and Bob Odenkirk. Like, it's crazy. And there are some really deeply talented actors, singers, performers here. So I'm lucky. It's fun to be friends with actors because you get to see people kind of ascend to different heights at random times throughout their careers. And these are definitely people to look out for.
Alana, give us a little bit of a rundown of the show. How's the evening going to work?
I mean, you're gonna come in, you're gonna start drinking immediately, because we'll all just be funnier the more you drink. I highly suggest that. And then we're just gonna start the show. I mean, everybody's singing some songs that are their favorite comedy pieces. So I hope you have maybe like some Depends on or something because you might pee a little like but yeah, so we're just gonna go through all these absolutely fantastic performers, like Grant said. Everybody's going to sing some songs. We have a local comedian, David Carter, who's going to do some stand-up comedy for us in the middle. And then we'll get to see Grant perform his comedy pieces that he's written live for the first time. So it's just going to be a fun evening of like laughs and an intimate setting.
And I'm at the end of the night. Everyone is really drunk, which is actually ideal. That's perfect.
Right.
So,
He's tried to talk me out of him going last, but as much as very similar to how I asked him to do this show, it was a demand that he is going last.
Grant, tell us a little bit about Doll's House Part 2 that you're directing at Edge of the Wood.
I am directing A Doll's House Part 2 at Edge of the Wood Theater, written by Lucas Nath. The show opens August 14th and it runs till the 23rd. There's only 6 performances, so we're eligible for 0 awards. It's very much just a passion project of mine because I had the right actors at the right time, and it's a beautifully written play. It's very funny. It's really provocative. It's moving. It's all sorts of things, and it's a really talented group of actors. So you can get tickets for that at edgeofthewood.com. Tickets are cheap. We're running Wednesday through Fridays because one of our actors is in the Mud Show at the Renaissance Fair in Bristol, Wisconsin. So you can see him and talk to. Did you know that? Anyway, he's really cool. But please, yeah, come see this show at Davenport's. Come see that show. Another opportunity to see some great Chicago talent in a different venue. It's gonna be great.
Friday, August 9th at Davenport's Piano Bar in Wicker Park. Tickets now on sale through Eventbrite. All the info at davenportspianobar.com. A funny thing happened on the way to Chicago. Please go check them out. Grant, Alana, thank you so much for your time today.